Hello, everyone, and after a long time, I'm going to try to make things with the channel work again. So, I'm going to try to come back for a bit, but no promises. So, our little random history journey today is going to be the fall of the Eastern Roman Empire, or better known, the Byzantine Empire. So, to start things off, what is the Byzantine Empire? The Byzantine Empire is the Eastern Roman Empire that had its capital set up in Constantinople, which was originally Byzantium, Greece. It was set up during the reign of Constantine, and and while Constantinople was seen as a capital of the Roman Empire, the split between East and West wouldn't really come about until Theodosius II. Now, the the development of Constantinople as a power in a lot of ways had to do with its ability to have a lot of the richer provinces under its control, from the grain of Egypt to a lot of the mining and trade points of the East and Constantinople itself. Now, alongside that, its legacy and reach would wax and wane. Like, you would have dynamic emperors and empresses like Justinian and Theodora. You would have capable military commanders like Belisarius, and even what one would call both powerful but short sighted, like Heraclius. What what really kind of was the strength of Constantinople was its ability to adapt but still have identity. Yes, it would go from Latin to being mostly Greece as its power base, and but on top of that, they knew how to keep enough of the Roman identity that, in a lot of ways, their prestige helped them stay alive for until 1453. Now, what really can we point as like a star of a downward trend of Constantinople if the Arab conquest of most of the provinces wasn't the killing blow? Well, that what could be seen as a star of a downward trend would be arguably the Balmanzikert. But and a lot of military historians will point out Manzikert as a giant failure of the Byzantine Empire. In reality, most of the armies of Byzantium were still intact after the battle. What made Manzikert as devastating as it was has a lot to do with the political situation of Byzantium, because with how Byzantine succession often worked is there would be a dynasty, but the idea that those dynasties really had a long-term claim to the throne never really got solidified, which allowed for a lot of backstabbing, betraying, and coups and civil wars to prop up throughout most of Byzantine history. So, what happened was after Manzikert, instead of being able to bounce back and head back into battle, Constantinople fell into a civil war that ended only with the rise of the Komnene dynasty of Alexios. Now, most of what we actually know about the reign of Alexios, at least popularly, got solidified by his daughter Anna Komnene in the Alexiad. But what we so there is a bias, but how much is negligible. So Alexios in a lot of ways spent most of his reign solidifying his hold in the western part of the empire against Cuman Pechenegs and the resurgence of Bulgars. While in the east, he had to rely on a lot of his ability to be diplomatic to Turks, but because, especially with the Seljuks being having multiple groups and tribes within them, he had to try to placate multiple different Seljuk groups. Alongside that, this is also the rise of Norman power expeditions, which led to Alexios having to fight the people who he would later have in the First Crusade. So, and on top of that, especially after the Civil War, with Alexios trying to centralize power back into the emperor position, he had to micromanage and also be ruthless, which led to a purge of the noble class and him trying to appoint as many people as possible. So, I'm sure a lot of you probably have heard a lot of tales of the First Crusade, but most of them are Western perspectives from a popular history point of view. The actual Byzantine perspective that we kind of get with Anna and later chronicles, because they came later, most of the myth of the Crusades and the Byzantines being backstabbers and abandoning the crusade despite the fact that for much of the crusade they supplied and actually gave a lot of naval support, has led to a bad taste in everyone's mouth. So, the First Crusade is both a success and a failure story. The failure aspect of it is it was a short-term victory that because a lot of the Crusaders sacked, pillaged European vassals of the Byzantine and attempts out the Byzantine heartland itself, alongside with the People's Crusade, and also on top of that, the fact that the Crusades also killed a lot of Jews in both Europe and attacked Jews in the Holy Land itself. Left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And on top of that, because the schism between East and West was starting to form, and the fact that Urban made this a holy war, which Alexios did not want that narrative. He wanted to make it clear this was a war to recapture and defend Byzantine territory. And alongside that, while he was happy for a buffer between him and potential invasions, and he was able to get back several key Anatolian coastal cities and was able to leverage concessions and peace from different Turkish groups. The fact that he was doing that made a lot of Crusaders view him as betraying them, when in reality, Alexios was always upfront that for him this was not a holy war. He saw the crusade as him asking assistance from the West. And a lot of that is because of messaging by Pope Urban II, who was using a hope of healing the schisms and trying to gain legitimacy to strike out against different anti-popes and the Holy Roman Emperor at the time. So, because of that, what the crusade meant to the Crusaders and the Byzantines just did not align. Which, because of the harsh feelings, we get the Fourth Crusade. And I am going to try my best to breeze through this part because the Fourth Crusade was messy. Long story short, everyone was distracted with a succession crisis of the Holy Roman Empire between the Hohenstaufens and a man named Otto. Because of that, when Pope Innocent III called a crusade, there really wasn't a lot of upper nobility, and on top of that, there wasn't a lot of people that had the liquid capital or really the resources to outfit the crusade, which led to Venice. And the fact that there were two different crusading groups, one that was more focused on ensuring the defense of already established crusader states, and one that and the main attack force that was being outfitted by Venice. But because we're talking about a split group, that means what money and men were around was shrunk from estimates, which led to a huge debt and Venice wanting to recoup that debt, so they went after Zara, and then they found exiled Byzantine prince, and the rest is history, plus or minus sieges of Constantinople, fire, and the creation of the Latin Empire that lasted about a century, and the Byzantines would come back only to kind of realize how shrunk their territory was and how beholden they would be to the Italian states of Venice and Genoa to keep their economy going, and having to intermarry with Ottomans to try and keep peace, even though they, depending on the emperor or the time period, they would be simultaneously vassals to the Ottomans and also provoking the Ottomans. While while the Byzantines would try to make gambits with the West and the Catholic Church that led to the Council of Florence, unfortunately, especially after the Latin Empire, um, all that did was actually push more Byzantines to kind of accept the fact that there was a good chance that the Ottomans would be their overlords, and what crusades were called to try and push back the Ottomans only either had short term success or just did not get off the ground. So by the time of Mehmed II, the Byzantines and Ottomans already intermarried. A lot of the economy and land was actually controlled by Italian states, and what really kept the Byzantines alive was probably their history and prestige and what their influence on the Orthodox Church meant to different groups. So by the time it fell, it's hard to say what that actually meant. Because by the time it fell, there just wasn't a lot of people. There wasn't a lot of money. There wasn't a lot of land. And arguably, it was the prestige that really was what left of this last gasp of the Roman Empire. So, yeah, that's the fall of the Byzantines. Sources are down below, and I do actually encourage you to look into the books on the First and Fourth Crusade because they're actually very fascinating. Anyway, have a good one.